Good morning, everyone. This morning, we are going to talk about the book, The Essential Laws of Fearless Living by Guy Finley. The subtitle to that is Finding the Power to Never Feel Powerless Again. And I'm Amy Burnett, for those of you who don't know me. So I always like to tell you guys why I chose a particular book or subject. And I'll tell you that at this year's White Stone ceremony, the word that came up for me and ended up on my white stone was fearless. And let me tell you that probably a millisecond after that word came up and I knew that was the word going on my white stone, I instantly had overwhelming fear about owning the name Fearless and putting that on the white stone. And so I don't know if any of you can relate to things like that, where you know that that's what's there for you this year, and then you instantly think, oh, why did I have to listen to that, and why did I actually write it down? So that's where, as I was thinking through what does that mean and what is desiring to show up through me in taking that label of fearless and applying it to my life this year. And I was going through different, books to see what I might do for some of the upcoming classes. And I came across this book, The Essential Laws of Fearless Living. And let me tell you, I thought, there it is. That's going to be the manual to, the secret answer that somehow I've not come across before. And this is going to be it. And as I read through this book, it is full of wonderful and beautiful truths. It absolutely resonated very deeply. And what I came to realize is that the truth is just the truth, guys. And I know Sue has said this so many times that no matter what the question is, the answer is always going within. And that's where you're always going to find the answer. And so this is no different. Being fearless, when I think of fearless, I don't know, I see, someone standing tall, standing strong, and, throwing caution to the wind and not being afraid of anything. And what I came to realize in reading this material and really sitting with it is that fearlessness, in the sense of spiritual maturity and spiritual growth, is much less about standing with your armor of fearlessness on, and much more about accepting what is and the truth of this human existence. And that was, I guess, not really surprising, but I guess, I'm always searching for that aha answer and that aha moment. And not to say that wasn't an aha, but I guess I really just was thinking there was going to be some different rule book, or there was going to be some step-by-step how-to that was going to be different. And what I got was just more truth and deeper understanding. Of course, anytime that we're on this spiritual journey, even if we're reading material that essentially says the same thing, because it's the laws of the universe, so there are going to be similarities in a lot of these texts that we read, and a lot of those that have come before us that have reached a different level of Christ consciousness or a different level of spiritual development. They know that this is the path, and there's going to be similarities because they're following the spiritual laws of the universe. And each time we revisit it, we're revisiting from a different level of our own consciousness, and we're hearing something else that we needed to hear, and we're maybe putting pieces together I always like to think of it as like those puzzle pieces are clicking together in my mind and in my consciousness, or that there's threads being strengthened to that level of higher consciousness that I'm trying to stay connected with. And that each time I read something and dig into this material, it's just strengthening that connection. It's building, putting more threads there, and it's making that even more unbreakable so I can always find my way back to it. So I think one of the essential statements that Guy Finley makes in this book about being fearless is that we are not created to spend our lives in fearful preparation over what may come, but rather to use what comes our way each moment to help us perfect our understanding that God is good. And so what he brings to us is that the essential nature of being fearless is recognizing that God is good all the time, and that we are of that Christ nature, that Christ consciousness, and therefore anything that's showing up, anything that's coming our way is truly there for our good in some form or fashion. He goes to outline some steps, and not really steps, but just kind of a path of things that we need to do in order to truly sit into this idea of fearlessness. And so first, he talks about welcoming the light that makes life bright. And this is really, he speaks about getting in touch with and accepting our true self, being aware that the thoughts we're giving energy to and taking and make sure we're taking care not to base our identity on the problems, struggles, or negative thoughts that we're having. So that's that idea that, what we're giving our attention to is what's going to grow. And so if we are identifying with the problem, if we are in that victim consciousness and we are relating our daily life to that problem or struggle, or allowing our identity to be wrapped up in those negative thoughts, that's what's going to be pulling our energy. And it will pull it away from the truth that we are that Christ consciousness within, that light lives within us. And so he says, one thing that makes negative states difficult to drop is the illusion they create that there is no choice other than to cave into them. And so how many times have we been in that situation where there's something negative, there's some outside circumstance that's going on, and it seems to be overwhelming. It seems that there's no escaping it, that reality is just right there in front of your face. And he says that's really not the case. The truth is that the negative state has no choice but to disappear once we remember that there is no darkness greater than the light of our Christ consciousness within. So that negativity, that negative problem, that negative thought that is there is getting bigger and bigger and has to make itself seem as if there's no way out, because the reality is that thought or problem cannot exist without us being distracted from the light within and who we truly are. He goes on to talk about building foundations of a fearless life and sitting into, that awareness that each moment is an opportunity for us to learn from what is being revealed, and that it's exactly as it should be. So if we are feeling fear or anxiety or stress, if there's a negative thought, if there's a problem coming up for us, that if we can truly sit in the foundational belief that it's coming up for a reason, it's there to maybe push us out of some error thinking, it's there to wake us up from some illusion that we've bought into. We have to remain open to focus on what that is trying to show us instead of the thing itself. So instead of getting wrapped up in feeling that anger or feeling that resentment or feeling that frustration, feeling that fear, we have to remember, even in those moments, and strengthen our awareness to snap ourselves out of that and immediately start to look for, what is this trying to teach me? Why is this coming up for me? And some of those things, it seems like they're coming up all the time when we're really trying to work through something. And I'll tell you, as I was reading through this material, and as even today, as I'm thinking through this talk and you know, thinking through these concepts, there are really some areas in my life where things just keep coming to the surface because I have not yet done all of the inner work that is mine to do to be able to shift my focus away from that problem and remember, even in those moments, even when that hard thing is coming up, that it is truly there for my good, and it is just a way for my higher self to get me out of that stinking thinking and make me focus on the truth that's within. He then talks about breaking through the illusion of limitation. And so he says the only purpose discouraged feelings serve is to keep our thoughts on what we can't do. And with our attention fixed there on what seems impossible, there is no room for discovering what is possible. So again, it's just a way that those negative thoughts are playing tricks on us in a way. We are distracted from what we can do and what is possible, and we get really focused in on what seems impossible for us. Our higher self-awareness through self-observation puts us in direct contact with superior intelligence that lives within us. So our higher self knows that we are connected. And so the more we can practice and break through those illusions by getting in touch with that higher self-awareness through self-observation. So we really start to look at, why is that coming up? What is that there to teach me? How am I responding in a way that's not serving my higher self? The more we can really strengthen that self-observation and putting us in that state of higher self-awareness and higher consciousness, that's our direct link to that superior intelligence that lives within us. And it will just strengthen our ability to not get tripped up by all of that stuff that's coming up. So we have to work to connect ourselves to the allness of life instead of identifying with the smallness of life. I really like that. So spend our time connecting to the allness instead of focusing and identifying with the smallness of life. And that's how we awaken to a greatness that's already living within. And we will be, I love this phrase that he says, you will be no more bothered by the little things in life than a mountain is made miserable by the rain that falls upon it. Next, he talks about taking conscious command of yourself. So this is where we have to, so we know this intellectually, maybe we know this, or we can even feel it spiritually that this is truth. In taking conscious command of yourself, it's really that step where we agree to let the light of our higher perception do its work. And we get out of our own way and we say, show me what there is to show me. And I know that I can learn and I can be transformed. And so that higher perception is trying to perfect us in ways that we can't even imagine. It's trying to show us how we can strengthen that connection and how we can live from that place more authentically. And so he talks about this process. That's a process of reveal, transform, release, reveal, transform, release. And there is no way of knowing how many times we would have to go through that process before we reach that higher level of consciousness. But just being accepting and agreeing that is the process that's happening and allowing ourselves to go through it. He says we have to realize that being enlightened feels much better than being frightened. And so each time we're feeling that, to truly go back to that place of, when we're feeling those fears, to say, the feeling frightened doesn't feel good. How can I seek enlightenment through this experience? And what is this experience trying to teach me to get there? And that's going to feel much better. He talks about then the realizing the heart of happy human relationships and recognizing that we are not islands in of ourselves. And so much as we live in a society, we have people around us, we have relationships, and we definitely are social beings. That's a part of our human nature. And so it's unrealistic to think that we're going to get through life without having relationships with people. But he says we need to remember that we have to see through the false idea that someone else can make us whole, or that it's their job to make us whole. And we have to give up struggling in vain to make others into what we want them to be and trying to change them to suit our needs, because it's a fruitless effort. And there's a lot more in there about relationships. That wasn't where I was really focused today. So I'll just leave it at that. But there's a lot of good stuff in there if you want to grab this book and read it. He then talks about being at peace with yourself. And he says it only seems as if there's something more important for you to do than just quietly be yourself. And isn't that so true? And I know that Sue has talked to us so many times about making that time of spiritual practice to go within and finding, not using the excuse of not having enough time. And this is what he strengthens here. He says, it only seems like you have something better to do. It only seems like something's more important, because at the end of the day, the most important thing that we can be doing is being in touch with our true self and recognizing that connection and that strength within. And this is truly about, once again, be still and know. And you can't do that if you never slow down or you never sit still long enough to try to get there. So he really, encourages us to develop a practice of a meditative life and self-surrender. And he defines self-surrender not as an acceptance of limitations. That's not what he's talking about. He's talking about self-surrender in the sense that we need to tune in to a higher consciousness and transcend limitations. So it's a self-surrender to our true self, to our Christ self, to our inner wisdom, to, spiritual intelligence, whatever it is that you call that or claim that for yourself, that's what we're trying to do in that meditative life. So however that looks for you is the practice that would be most beneficial for you. It's just really about self-surrender, getting to that place and recognizing that there is nothing more important in your day than taking those moments to be with yourself. He then talks about being one with the light of life. And he says, we've forgotten that who we really are can't be made captive in any dark condition any more than a sunbeam can be caught in a bottle. Our true self is success itself, because by its light, it fulfills and liberates all that it touches. And so again, real fearlessness comes with knowing that you have everything you need to succeed in the same moment that it is needed. And again, this is where, I started out thinking of this label of fearlessness as the kind of the brave warriors standing in their armor and being ready for whatever comes against them. And truly, fearlessness is about self-surrender and knowing that there's nothing to fear, because everything you need has always been and will always be right there for you. And that any situation that's happening in your life is truly happening exactly as it was meant to be, and is only happening because your higher consciousness is moving you toward something even better, and something that you cannot even imagine for yourself. Even when in the moment it feels really yucky and it feels really scary, being able to transcend that fear, to, immediately shift when you start to feel that come up and that's not feeling good again, to be able to say, oh, wait a minute, what is this trying to show me? And how can I see that maybe on the other end of this, or as I move through this, the only purpose of this event is to strengthen my connection with my source. So I looked also at another interview that Guy Finley had done, and he was asked what his top 3 tips would be for helping others become more aware of their fears and working through them. And so he says, tip number 3, no psychological fear exists without negative imagination. So this means anytime you catch yourself starting to be afraid of some situation, you need only to become aware of this fact and make the fear fade away. The fear you feel is because you are in a waking dream, a nightmare produced by a sleeping mind that first pictures something terrible and then tries to run away from its own fearful imagery. And I read that and thought, like, are you kidding me? But it's what we do to ourselves, right? So we imagine something to be fearful of. We imagine the worst case scenario. We create these images of things that don't feel good, that aren't what we want. And then we spend all this time trying to run away from and escape the illusion and the situation that we created in our own mind. And when you think about it like that, that just sounds crazy, but that is what we do. He said, second, nothing in the universe can stop you from letting go and starting over. So be aware of how a fear wants you to believe that there's no way out, and then just dare to walk right through it. And so again, there's no law of the universe that says if you are in the grips of fear, or if you get distracted from your source, that's it. You're just stuck there. There is no law of the universe that says that. Every law of the universe says that is the illusion. That is not a truth. And the truth is that you have within you the power to make it through any situation, the power to find the good and see the good in all things, and be more connected to your higher source. And once you can feel that and know that, that fear can't live, and it just dissipates and moves away. We can always start over. We can always move through because we have what we need right within us. And he says, number 1, learning to doubt the intelligence of being afraid of any unwanted situation is the first step in liberating yourself from the fear that makes the situation unwanted in the first place. Doubt your fears instead of allowing them to cause you to doubt yourself. I'm going to say that again. Doubt your fears instead of allowing them to cause you to doubt yourself. How powerful is that? That if we can become aware of those fearful thoughts, if we can become aware of anything that's bubbling up that's not serving us, and as soon as we feel it, as soon as we become aware of it, we doubt that feeling as being truth, versus doubting ourselves, doubting our connection, doubting who we are, doubting those around us, all of those things. If that one thing that was, if we could remember one thing from this, it is that to doubt your fears instead of allowing them to make you doubt yourself. And back to the, the quintessential passage is that we are not created to spend our lives in fearful preparation over what may come, but rather to use whatever comes our way each moment to help us perfect our understanding that God is good. And I just bless you all on your journey. I know I continue to be on mine, and I will try, not I will try, I will begin to doubt those fears more thoroughly and not allow them to create doubt within myself. I think that, again, is one of the most powerful action steps that we can take away, as well as remembering that there is nothing more important that is going on than in our lives than to be still and become centered and strengthen that connection to our inner source. That's the most impactful thing we can do to change our lives. That's the only way that true change and authenticity is going to happen. I hope you all are staying warm today. I hope that, we all stay warm and safe, and that this winter weather is just an opportunity for us to appreciate the beauty of the universe and make some extra time to sit with ourselves in silence and get in tune with that inner voice, so that when those fears come up, we know to doubt them, because our truth is radiating so strongly within us that they don't have the power to distract us any longer. Thank you all. Have a wonderful day. And I say namaste to you.